Automation testing that we call it independent execution because basically the testing which is manually done by the testers. So the automation testing is come with some facilities which will automate those test cases automatically without any human. So we can call it as an independent execution tool. So we can see the basics of the automation testing. So there are certain high level points which you can cover. So basically this is the testings which decreases the human efforts. It provides the automatic execution without human interference. While automation testing, that is something an independent function of the machine. All the test cases which is manually executed by the testers. If those test cases have the scope of automations, that means those test cases will be executed automatic by the machines. That is why it will not need any human interference, or it will not need any human efforts. Automation also helps the parallel execution of many test cases. Basically, at a time only the one test cases can be executed manually by a tester, but automation also helps the parallel execution. That means at a time we can execute more than thousands of test cases parallelly. That automation is the best of for the repetitive testing. If there are thousands of test cases which is a similar kinds of activity and does not affected by change in software, it can be best executed by automation just in 2 to 3 hours. So this much time, efforts and money we can save. What are the cons? That means we will see the disadvantages. The automation testing with manual testings. So the manual testing basically whichever be the software is developed for the first time, so we cannot start the automation testing from the scratch if because for the automation testing the testers should know which are the test cases, or the automation testers should know which are the test cases which is having the scope of automation. So anything from the scratch should be done manually. Second point, the critical test cases which is considered to have a number of steps and dependent activities. There are some critical test cases can be happen, and definitely in a big software there are some critical test cases. So which is considered to have a number of steps and dependent activities. So there is always prescribed to have it done by manually. Automation testers sometimes fails because it is not prescribed or preferred to do it for the critical test cases. Second topic is a prerequisite for the automation testing. For the prerequisites for automation testing, these are the prerequisites which you have to be in your machine when you are going to develop the automation framework. Building framework. In this topic, we will cover the high level architecture of the automation framework. Topic 4 is the Java concept and important packages. Basically, when you are just building the automation framework using the IDE which is supports the Java language, so you should know the Java concept as well as its important packages. Selenium Webdrivers. Selenium, which actually is nothing but to talk with the browser. Basically, when whatever the actions we perform with the browser, this is a Selenium who mimics our behavior. I mean, this is the jar which is responsible for it, and the WebDriver locators which through which we use to find the element, assertion verify, test ng framework, types of automation framework. Basically there are three types of framework in the component involved in designing test framework: page load, object model, parameterizing, logging, exception handling, multi-browser testing, capture screenshots, implicit wait plus explicit results. So these are the topics which we will cover in the next we will see the basics of software testing. There are two basics of software testing. One is the black box testing, and another one is the white box testing. The black box testing is a testing technique that ignores the internal mechanism. That means in this testing there is nothing to do with the code of the your automation development. It just focuses on the output generated against any input and execution of the system. In this testing, it will only compare the expected and the actual result. So this is also called the functional testing. What is a white box testing? In the white box testing is a testing technique that takes into account the internal mechanism. That means it will look into the code of a system, and it is also called structural testing and a glass box testing. Now we are looking into the types of software testing. So you can see the unit testing, integration testing, structural testing, functional testing, regression testing. Unit testing is test conducted on the individual model, which is the collection of code, submodel, functional subprogram, stored procedure. So basically, in a software project, there are a number of modules. So if you are doing a testing, a unit testing, that means you are testing on a simple individual module. Integrated, that means something. This is the activity of software testing in which the individual modules, software models, are combined and tested. Now the structural testing. This is the activity of white box testing approach to focus on the internal mechanism. It includes branch test, part test, statement test. As I told in the previous slide, that in the white box testing takes into account the code of the system. So it looks into the internal mechanism. So the testing can be done on the basis of branch test, path test, and statement test. Now the functional testing. It includes positive, negative test. Verify it. In this, it verify whether the software is working or not according to the user expectation. Now the regression testing. See, the regression testing pack is very important for the automation testers, because when a defect is found in verification and it is fixed, so we need to verify whether the fixed defect is done properly and does not break anything else. That means if the defect is fixed, so it should not halt the execution of other test cases. Another one is performance stress load alpha beta. Beta is something performed by the actual customer. Alpha testing performed by the developer or the end user. That means perform on the developer side or the customer side. Customer here is like the end users working on sites. What is stress load? Stress, that means, so basically we will see the stress testing. Stress testing, it determines the load under which the test got failed. This testing evaluates a system or component beyond its limit of specified requirement to determine the load under which it fails. So what is the stress testing basically? Um, it is in a stress testing, it only identify the load where the system get failed. Suppose there is a site and there are a number of users which are using that site, but might be in middle the site is not able to handle all the users, so it is crash. So in that system we will do the stress testing. What is a load testing? It is the activity under which the anticipated load applies. Means load testing, that is something we can do after the stress. Here the anticipated load slightly put into the system and checks whether the performance is degraded or not. What is the performance testing? Performance testing is a test that is determine end-to-end timing of various time-critical business process and transaction. So it is the best example of this performance testing is the banking and the business. Suppose when you sign into your bank account, so basically it should take, when you sign in into a bank account, it should take hardly 1 to 2 seconds. But if it is taking more than these seconds, that means the performance model is working properly. So this is the basic example. The prerequisites for the automation framework. So you can see the shells like Eclipse. These are the prerequisites which should be there in your machine when you want to develop the automation framework. The first is Eclipse IDE. There are so many other IDE in the market, but here we have been used the ID Neon. So this is the one of the most preferable IDE. integrated development environment. Java development kit, this is the basic thing for any IDE. This should be first in your machine. Another is Selenium WebDriver. Obviously, when you want to automate the test cases of your website, so this jar files should be there in your machine, so you can download this jar file from the web, from any website. Test engine framework, which will be there in your IDE. Auto ID tool is a third party tool which I will tell you in the another PPTs. Browser, obviously, and JXN and Apache POI. This is the jar files for the Excel files. Definitely, you will not keep your data in your code. You will be keep your data outside of the test scripts. Obviously, so these kind of data when you keep in Excel file. So to read the data from the Excel files, you will be need the jar files JXL or Apache POI. So while building the automation framework, we should always concentrate on the architecture of projects. So these are the high level language. So while building the automation framework, we should always concentrate on the architecture of projects so that everything at its proper place. So please, so this is the high level diagram. So these are the certain things we should have to keep in mind while building the automation framework. So first is a UIMap object repository. It is nothing but the collection of web elements. Basically, how the Selenium Java files can interact with the browser or the web driver. It can only interact with the browser on the basis of elements. Data sets. This is the scripts in the data set or test data folder. We will keep the scripts which will read the data from the external files. Definitely, we will keep our data test cases out of the test scripts. Test automation script. Basically, in the test automation script folder, there will be a sequence of actions which will execute our actual test cases. A report or execute result, whatever will be the result of the test cases, it will be generated in the report or executed result. Another is the test ng XML file. So we will see in our next PPT. You can see the Java concept and important packages. So here you can see some more languages concepts, the class, objects, polymorphism, abstractions. So class is nothing but a collection of objects. Class, as you can see as well, any entity that has state behavior is known as object. Polymorphism, when one task is performed by different ways, that is known as polymorphism. For example, to convince the customer differently, and to draw something, example shape or rectangle, etc. In Java we use method overloading and method overriding to achieve the polymorphism. In short, that means one form which do the different things, that is polymorphism. Abstraction, hiding internal details and showing functionality is known as abstraction. For example, phone call, we just do the call, we do not know no internal processing. So in Java we use abstract class and interface to achieve the abstraction. Encapsulation, binding code and data together into a single unit, is known as encapsulations. Basically, encapsulation is what? That means which is wrapping code and data together into a single unit. How we can achieve the encapsulations? Like generally, you would see when you just prepare a class, you just write the declare the variables. So how you just declare the variable which is might be private, protected, or public. So access modifiers, that means encapsulation, where we are using the encapsulation. If you write the method private, or you write the variables private, if you write the method private, so nobody, I mean, it cannot be accessed of the out of that class. That means which is encapsulating the code and data together. For example, capsule, it is wrapped with the different medicines. A Java class is the example of encapsulations. Java Bean is a fully encapsulated class because all the data members are private here, as I told you. In short, if you are using the access modifiers to keep your data private, protected, or public, is just an example of encapsulation. Interface, we can create a contract, or we can say set of rules for the behavior of software application. Interface is nothing but it's just a class, but it contains the abstract method only. If the class which is implementing the interface, that means it has to implement the method of interface. It just provide the set of rules the other class which is implementing interface has to do the same thing. Inheritance, when one object acquires all the properties and behaviors of parent object, known as inheritance. It provides the code reversibility. It is used to achieve the runtime polymorphism as well. So these are the important packages of automation framework using the Selenium WebDriver and Java syntax for creating any packages. Start with the import, for example, import and then space and java.io.file. So these are some important packages which we will be definitely used to sure to use in our automation development. So first is the org.openqa.selenium. So these are um, um, the files with respect to the Selenium that is allowed by WebDriver, web element, Firefox driver, Chrome, IE interaction.actions. Other this is the other block is with respect to the testng packages, that is .xz, .annotations, and third one is with respect to Java .file, io.file input stream, io.io exceptions, input stream, .util, .properties. The other topic is Selenium WebDriver interface. So basically, Selenium is an open source and portable automated software system tool for testing the web application, and it has the capabilities as well to operate across different browsers and operating systems. So it's a multi-browser supporter, and we can see here the evolution of the Selenium WebDriver. Basically, the Selenium was introduced as an IDE integrated development environment in Firefox browser. So Selenium IDE is a Firefox plugin that lets tester to record their actions. Then the Selenium RCS came, which was nothing but a flagship testing framework. It was also a testing framework that allowed more than simple browser action and linear execution. And finally, the Selenium WebDriver comes, which overcomes the limitation of RC, and basically it sends the commands directly to the browsers and retrieve the results. Now the Selenium WebDriver. Selenium WebDriver is a software testing tool. Basically, it is a well-designed, object-oriented application developed to automate the web application, mobile application testing process. So this is a superior over the Selenium RC, and WebDriver is an interface, and it is implemented in the below classes. As you can see, that the WebDriver is an interface, so we cannot instantiate the object of WebDriver. This is a reference type. This is only the reference type. The classes which will implement the WebDriver interface are the Firefox driver, Chrome driver, HTML driver, Internet Explorer driver. So these are the classes which implemented that WebDriver, which is implementing the WebDriver interface. So we can see its implementations that we are using the reference type WebDriver driver equals to, and then creating the object of Firefox browser. Basically, interface is nothing. It's a class, but it's a collection of abstract methods. So the class which is implementing the interface, which is using the interface, has to implement this method. So as I told you, this is the multi-browser supported, so we can create, if you want to use the Chrome driver, we can create the object of Chrome driver. If you want to create the if you want to use the Firefox driver, we can write this like WebDriver driver equals to new Firefox driver. So this way we can initialize the selected browser using WebDriver interface, which will open the browser. It directly interact with the browser and mimic the behavior of real users. Basically, what happens, like we are the user and we click the button. So WebDriver will do the same with their test script. Come to the topic locators, object 25. Basically, if the WebDriver wants to interact with the browser, so it can only interact with the browser and execute the test cases on the browser on the basis of web elements. These are object identifier, I'm sorry. So there are 8 locators or the 8 object identifiers to find the elements on the web pages. The first 4 are, we can see on the screen, are id, name, link text, and partial link text. The main thing behind these 4 object identifiers are that it can find element it can find only single element at a time. So it is these 4 object identifier are used to find a single element at a time. So we can see the id. For example, if the HTML tag is written like that, the input ID equals to email and the class equals to require, type equals to text. So the so we in which, so what is the syntax to fetch the element of ID type? So the web element is a class element equals to driver dot find element by dot which locator we are using. This is the ID, and in close brackets we will be use the value of that ID, which is which we can see is the email. The second one is the name. Example, input name equals to register, that means the value of the name is register, class required, type text. So again we are using the web element register is just an object equals to driver dot find element by dot name, and the value of that name is equals to register. Same thing as link test, partial link test. What is the difference between the link test and the partial link test is that in the link test, the HTML code, you can see a is equals to h reference because it's a link test. I mean, this will be a link. When you just click the link, it just send you to some other page or some other information. So link is something which you find in a sense of a website, which will open the website, which can open the another website or the page of that another page of that website. So sometimes the link text is written in single word, like in the third option we can see downloads. Only the single word has been written in that HTML code is download. So what we will do, we will simply write that web element download equals to driver dot find element by dot link text, and that value is downloads. What is a partial link text? Sometimes it happens that the link text has been written in number of words. For example, the example is a is equals to a as reference equals to Selenium. This is a link test name, and the value is download Selenium server. That means it has been, now it is given more than one word. So the basic idea is that if the cursor goes to download, so it should click that whole link and it will um, divert towards the particular page. So that's why we are using the partial link text. Here's the tag name, class name, and CSS selector. So the tag name basically is used for that element which itself contains more than one element. For example, the drop down box. In the drop down box, when you just drop down, there are number of elements you can see. So for that reason we use the select classes. The syntax of that select class is equals to select, an object equals to new select class, and the same syntax which we were using for finding the first single element at a time, the driver dot find element by dot tag name, and the value of that select. Then select by visible text equals select by visible text. That means November we are using, just for example, that in the November this is the value if you want to see that particular value in those collections, so we can use the select by visible text. The sixth one is the class name. The seventh one is the CSS selector. TestNG framework. TestNG is a testing framework that overcomes the limitation of another popular framework. Basically, there was initially the popular framework JUnit was using, but over this, the J TestNG is some extraordinary testing framework which comes up with some automatic reports development after the test case execution. So, as the WebDriver does not have the mechanism, if you are using the WebDriver, it does not have the mechanism to generate the report or generating the report, or it cannot generate the proper format for the result. So because of this, TestNG has provided some facilities and to provide the report after the test case execution. And not only the reason behind the TestNG framework using is the report, but also there are some facilities like annotations and many more. So we can see here the advantages of TestNG framework is the annotations are very easy to understand. The lines of control code that control the flow of method will be executed. Because of the annotation, there is we do not need any kind of main method when we are using the TestNG framework. Test cases can be grouped easily, definitely on the basis of annotation. Parallel testing is possible. On-code exception are automatically handled by TestNG without terminating the test prematurely. Exceptions are reported as failed step. I mean, it does not halt or does not interrupt the whole software or automation development. It just whichever the test case has as the exception, it will fail that test case or it will go to the another test case. What are the annotations? If you want the methods to be executed in different order, so these are basically the parameters. Annotations is something which decides the execution of your method. As we can see in this file, that this is the class name, that is a public class first test ng file, and we have written @test. So basically @test, where it is came from, it is came from just because of the test ng framework, which decides that @test decide this is the test method and it will be executed automatically. The annotated method is a part of test cases. Test is one of the annotations, and just because of the annotation we can write the @test and we can set the priority of the method. Suppose if it is written as 3, priority is equals to 3, and the second one method has the priority value of 0. So if it has a priority value of 0, it will be executed first. So this test case will be executed first, then this test case will be executed, and rest will be the priority equals to 7. So we can see some of the annotations here. Before suit, before suit, this is the annotated method will be run before all tests in this suit have run. In after suit annotation, the annotated method will be run after all tests in this suit have run. Before test, the annotated method will be run before any test method belonging to the classes inside the tag is run. The before groups, and this is the annotations. The basically there are lots of, you can see that before groups, after group, before class, after class, before method, and after test. So if you want to find out these annotations where can be best used, you can refer, so many sites are there in the internet. So you can see the we can see the basic definitions of all this. The list of groups that this configuration method will run before. This method is guaranteed to run shortly before the first test method that belongs to any of this group is involved. And the same thing like before class, the annotated method will be run after the first test method in the current class is invoked. That means whichever, see, this is the method something, if you are applying the annotations like at the rate before class, so that means something, that if you are apply this annotation to any methods, that annotated method will be run before the first test method in the current class is invoked. Similarly, the after class, then this annotated method will be run after all the test method in the current class have been run. The same thing in before method, this annotated method will be run before each test method. See, if I'm talking about the uh, before method, that means for every each test method, suppose there are so many test cases, so many test methods you have been written in your test scripts. So before any test method, if you are applying this annotation for any particular method, that means that method will be run before each test method. Similarly, after method, the annotated method will be run after each test method. After test, this annotated method will be run after all the test methods belonging to the classes inside the tag have been run. So, as we already discussed about the test engine framework, how it has been very helpful for the automation development, as it already comes up with so many facilities. So, as there is no more need for a static man method in our test, so at the rate test annotations, it automatically catches that it will execute the test method. Because of the test method, there is no more need for the static man method to start the program. So the sequence of action is regulated by easy to understand annotations that do not require method to be static. So there are two slides I have been shared with you. In the left side is the usual structure and the right side is a test engine structure. In the usual structure, we are definitely using our static man method where the program will be start executing. What has been written? We are taking the my class simple where we are declaring the string with the particular website, and we are creating the object of Firefox driver with the reference type WebDriver. Now in the main functions, we are calling three functions. We are writing three function. We are writing three statement. The first one, the driver.get base URL based on the string, which we have been declare in the first, which we have defined the first line. So driver.get will, what it will do, it will call that website in the browser, and verify homepage title will go to that function verify homepage title in which we have been write the expected title, the welcome mercury tools, and actual what we will do from our code. The string actual title is equals to driver.get title. What the driver.get title will do, driver will get the title of that website which it get called through the get statement. Now we are handling the exception handling. We are writing the exception handling like to the try catch. Now what is the assert? Assert is one of the class basically, uh, which has its boolean function assert equals. It will carry the two parameters actual title and expected titles. So in the assert equal function, if the actual title is equals to expected title, so it will return the true. Fine. So that test case, that function will be executed. It will not halt. It will not interrupt the execution. That means the test case is passed. That's why it is printing system.out println test passed. Otherwise catch and the test fail. In the right hand side, what we can see in the simple test engine. Another topic is automation framework. So basically, there are three types of automation framework are as below as like keyword driven framework, data driven framework, and hybrid framework. In generally, the real time environment or in most of the companies, the hybrid framework is used most of the time. So what exactly the keyword driven framework? This is also one of the most important framework. See, all the framework is not at all. It's just a type of architecture. It's not any kind of another concept. This is not a concept. This is just an architecture. That means it is just all depend on your project, which architecture or the framework is important according to your project. It is critical if it is easy, or if it is something wants the combination. So it all depends. I mean, just the difference of the data is just the difference of little bit change in code, you can say. Rest is same. So in the keyword framework, keyword driven test framework, all the operations instructions are written in some external file, Excel worksheet. I'm talking about the operation instructions. Rest the test script will be written in a code, and the instruction through which it will execute the test case of that Excel sheet is the operation I'm talking about. It's like your code will execute the test case of your Excel sheet on the basis of keywords that we are calling the operation and instructions. Now there are high level steps to create the keyword framework structure. The first one is the Excel reader, second is the Excel sheet test case execution. See, what is the Excel reader? I'm just talking about the high level steps which definitely will be you have to put in your framework structure. These are all the topics are different to each. I mean, you just have to put in different folder. That's what I mean to say. So in the Excel reader, we just have to create a class which will read the data from the Excel file. See, why I'm written these kind of things in this sense, because once you will go forward to automate your automation development, so somewhere you will not get from the scratch. Somewhere the automation development will be already done. So this is the code where it will help you uh, to understand the architecture, because whatever I'm telling you is a basic is a basic high level architecture information. So first, from the Excel reader, I create a class which will read the data from the Excel file. There will be all the test cases in your data will be in Excel file, obviously. So suppose we are creating the class read excel file.java, which is highlighted in blue. The second one, the Excel sheet is nothing but a test case file where it will contain the test case and the input data. Test case executor driver script, it will contain the script to execute the test case, as well as read and store the data from the Excel reader and object repository class. See, what I'm writing here in a statement, I already encapsulate it in an flow chart so that you can understand more easily. So what the test case executor, it will contain the script. Basically, it will contain the main script to execute the test case, as well it will read the data from the Excel reader file. That means it will interact with the Excel reader class, or it will interact with the object repository class, which I will show you next. So what is the object repository? Object repository is nothing but an object.property file which will store all the element locator or the web elements file. So what is the basic criteria? What is the basic motto to create this file? Because in future might be you are performing an automation, might be you are performing an automation on some website, and somehow the name of a web element or the location of the web element, name of the web element, it got changed. So that web element type or name, you just have to change in that object.property file, not in every code. Class to read object repository, obviously there must be a class which will read the data from object repository. That means which will read the data from object.property file. So we named it as a read object class. And the sixth one is a class that perform the operation. See, this is the main class after test executor file, execute test.java file. The driver means our execute test.java file will pass the data from Excel and object repository to UI operation class, and the UI operation class has a function to perform action corresponding to the keywords. Basically, UI operation class is a Java class which is the actual implementation of the code to perform operation on web element, and which is named as a UI operation.java. So you can see that I have been encapsulate it in a flow chart. So with the steps also, I have also already written it in steps. The first one is our execute test.java file, which is test case scripter or executor, which will read the data from the read excel file.java, which is first step. Second is from the test case.xls. Now the fourth one, it will read the data from the object repository. That means it will interact with the read object.java. Read object.java will interact with the object.repository. It will get back to read object, and that means execute test java. From the right side, it is getting the data from the excel file, and then the left side it is getting the web elements from object.repository. Now the final step, that is the eighth step, is ui operation.java. That means it is passing those data to this ui operation.java, and that ui operation.java will execute the test cases according to the instructions and keywords written in test access files. So this is the high level information. Now, what is about the data driven framework? See, in the data driven, basically, there's not much difference between the keyword and data, because in both the driven framework, that means in the keyword driven framework and the data driven framework, we are keeping the data outside the test tree. That means we are not hard coding the data in code, we are keeping the data in the external file, that can be Excel file or CSV file. Difference is in the data driven framework, it does not use any keywords in the test case, so it directly get the test data. And second thing, it uses a data provider concept, which we don't use in the keyword driven framework. So we can see in the diagram, there is the same step as below as the before, but only the ui operation we did not include. What we do in the hybrid is a collection of both keyword and data driven. That means we will also use the keyword, we will also use the keywords based operation, which will fetch the keywords, and it will also use the data provider. It will have the same it will have the same approach like keyword framework. Like in the hybrid driven framework, we are totally um, using the keyword driven framework with the external data provider concept. Second is the component object, page object model. So what is the criteria behind using the page object model is creating Selenium test cases. Basically, when we are creating the Selenium test cases, it can result in unmaintainable projects. One of the reasons is that too many duplicated code. See, what exactly the main idea behind using the page object model is that while developing the framework, we oftenly faces through the duplicate code in our project, which actually can result in an unmaintainable project. So duplicate code could be caused by duplicated functionality, and this will return in duplicated usage of locator, and because of that it can result to a duplicated usage of locators. Overall, we should have to reduce the duplicacy. The disadvantages of duplicated code is that the project is less maintainable. If some locator will change, you have to walk through the whole test code to adjust the locator where the necessary. Okay, by using the page object model, we can make non-brittle test code and reduce or eliminate duplicate test code. It is not about to reduce the duplicate code of locator, but there are some other things also to reduce the locators, to reduce um, the duplicate locators. We are better using the object or properties, but let's see some other implementation which is helpful through the page object model. So how we can achieve it is like, if you have a project, you just have to right click new package, just name this page object. Now in that package, right click and create a new class. So we will create the two class, home page and login page. So now it's just a simple code for the home page, nothing. We are just importing the packages. You can see Selenium by WebDriver, web element. Like you can see in the first three lines, openqa.element. As I already told you, these are the main important packages. Then we're starting with the class. We are the web element, we are declaring the web element. Now the method link my account is a method which we are defining the with the type web element. I mean, this is a method of type web element. It will return the web element type. Okay. Now what we written, element equals to driver dot find element. I mean, this is the basic syntax I've already told you. Driver dot find element by dot id. I mean, it will fetch the id whose value will be account. Now that now it will return that element. What is the second method is the link logout. So it will fetch that account logout and will return that element. Home page. Now it's a login page. What we are doing in the login page, we again um, creating the two methods, that is the text box username, text box password type web element type method, and third one is a button login web element type of web element. So they are also returning the same thing, element equals to driver dot find element by dot id log, that will return the element. It will return the element, and the third one, that is a button login, it will also return the element equals to driver dot find element by dot id login return. So these three method which is of the type web element, definitely it will return the element. See, before we were using the two classes, home page and the login page. Now how we are consuming the above two classes in our another class, which is actually the POM class, that means page object module class. So for that we also have to import the home page and login page class as well. You can see in the blue tag import package page objects, because those two classes, home page and the login page class, were made in page object package. So we have to import the page object package. Now we're creating the page object model architecture. So we can start with the public class page object model, and we also named it as a page object model, and then we'll declare the WebDriver equals to none. Here starting with the main, I'm just talking the POM concept. Now it's a driver, new Fox driver. Okay, it is creating the Firefox driver, creating the object of Firefox driver. And what is this driver dot manage dot timeout dot implicitly wait? That means driver, what is the meaning of this statement? That means it will pause the execution of that browser until the whole DOM, the document object module, is loaded. I mean to say the driver.manage.timeout implicitly wait 10 and time unit dot seconds. These are the two parameters. Time unit dot second, that means we are taking the unit of seconds, and the first one parameter is 10. So it will wait for the 10 second until the whole page is load. And what exactly we just use it, I'll clearly I will tell you elaborately in the next slides. So basically it will take for the 10 seconds until the whole architecture, the whole page is load properly. Because if we do not apply it, because see, every website has their own performance and they take their own statement. So suppose I do not write this statement, and driver equals to new Firefox driver will create the object of Firefox driver and will open the Firefox browser. Now my cursor will go to next statement, that means driver.get, and suppose my cursor comes to that statement that we have written without, and I'm not writing that implicitly wait statement, let it be command. So driver will comes to this statement, that means driver.get, but my page has not been loaded properly. and this driver will find that title, but the page has not been loaded. So what will be happen, the execution will fail. The second our last topic for this ppt is the parameterization. So basically the test engine allows the user to pass the values to test methods as arguments by using parameter annotation. So parameterization is one of the facilities which provided in terms of annotations, you can see. So what will happen is this, in the test ng, it will allow the user to pass the values to test method as arguments by using the parameter annotation through testng.xml file. That means this is something that we will use the parameter annotation in our test scripts, and that parameter annotation parameter will get the parameter data from the testng.xml file. For example, suppose like we can pass the username and password through testng.xml instead of hard coding it in the test methods. Like generally what happens, like suppose if something if we want to send the test data from our code to the browser, what we do, we just directly find the element and we do dot send keys and pass the values. Here we do not have to hard code in the test method. What we will do, we will just pass the parameter and we will take the value for that parameter from the test engine .xml files. For example, we will have the one class naming, one class file which will have the test parameter, where we will use the parameterization using @parameters, and this keyword like means the keyword that is @parameters will get the data from testng.xml file. For this we can see the implementation. The implementation of parameterization. So in the first three lines you can see it's a package name com.parameterization, which will be automatically come when you create the class under that parameterization package. It's a package name we just have been given. Other two are the packages which we are importing. It's like import org.testng.annotations.parameters. As you already implement a testng framework in your project, so you just have to write to those statements like import annotation.parameters, and then third one is import org.testng.annotations.test, because you are using these annotations, so you have to import that packages too. We just prepare the classes test parameters, and when we just open that class, now we are using the keyword parameters, and in the brackets we are using the parameter name browser. There are two methods or the test cases we are creating. The first one is a test case name, and the second one the test case 2. In the test case 1 you can see we are passing only the one parameter, that is known as browser, and the second method we are passing the two parameters. But from where we are getting these parameters, it is we are getting from the testng.xml file. And from where we are getting the value of these two parameters, the value of these two parameters are written in the testng.xml file itself. See that they are here it is the testng.xml file. So you can see the three lines which has been written in the parameter. The first one is the name is equals to browser and the value equals to Firefox. The fourth one is the parameter name is equals to username and its value is equals to test user, and the fourth one is equals to we are using the name password and the value is test password. That means these are the parameter, and the value for these parameters we are using the test we are written in the test ng.xml file itself. And now in the classes, what we have written, class name is equals to dot com dot parameterization dot test parameters. Parameterization is nothing but was our package name, and that test parameters is a class which is under the parameterization name. So how we have to run that code is nothing, you can see in the right hand side, which have mentioned in the uh, yellow square. So instructions to run the script is select the XML file and run as testng suite, or in clear, right click on that .xml file and run as testng suite. That's it, guys. If you really like this PPT and if you really find it very helpful, please just subscribe me, or you can write your suggestion or advice to my below listed Gmail ID, that is dogirkar swati gmail.com. Thank you so much.